All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to explore a really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty unconventional theory called Multicode 6.0. The big idea here is that there's a hidden architecture inside the world of numbers, especially prime numbers, and it doesn't see them as just abstract ideas, but as living, vibrating things.
In this quote right here, it just sets the stage perfectly. The whole theory is asking us to forget the simple number line we learned in school. Instead, you've got to imagine this: cosmic symphony, where every single prime number has its own unique beat, its own unique shape. It's a complete flip of the script on how we think about math.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into the symphony of numbers. Then we'll look at the main tool, the modulo 36 prism. After that, we'll meet the two stars of the show, the core oscillators 5 and 7. From there, we'll see how they build complex systems, and we'll wrap it all up by uncovering the so-called universal master key.
Okay, Section 1, a symphony of numbers. This is where we get into the real philosophical heart of this thing. The idea that numbers aren't just, well, numbers. They have a spirit, a unique kind of energy.
So how does that even work? Well, you have to stop thinking of a prime number as just a dot on a line. Instead, picture it as an oscillator, something that vibrates. And it's doing this inside a closed 360-degree circle. The whole point of Multicode 6.0 is to figure out how to map these vibrations, to find that one-of-a-kind energetic signature for every single prime.
Right, so if you're going to map these signatures, you need a tool, right? A lens to see through all the noise. And that brings us to Section 2, the modulo 36 prism. You can think of this as the Rosetta Stone for the entire system.
The whole thing is built around this modulo 36 idea. But why 36? What's so special about that number? Well, according to the theory, it's a huge deal because it's where the first two prime numbers, 2 and 3, come together. You've got 2 squared times 3 squared. This supposedly creates a special bridge connecting the binary world of 2s and the triadic world of 3s. So 36 becomes the ultimate filter for everything else.
And check this out. This is where you really see the power of that filter. When you run all the primes, well, except for 2 and 3, through this modulo 36 system, they don't just scatter everywhere. No way. They get funneled into only 12 of the 36 possible spots. The theory calls these resonance highways. So basically, 2/3 of the space is just numerical noise. It's an incredible way to cut through the clutter.
So just to recap, here are the key pieces of the puzzle. The system is based on the number 36. All that prime energy is happening in just 12 channels. There's a clear symmetry to it, and it all takes place inside that 360-degree circle. This is the stage, It's where everything plays out.
All right, let's get to our third section. Now that we have this stage, who are the main actors? Well, in this system, there are two numbers that are like the primary heartbeats, the real drivers of this whole symphony. We're talking about the core oscillators, 5 and 7.
And what's so cool about these two is how they mirror each other. You've got 5, which is part of the negative system, and then you have 7, which is in the positive system. They're both described as incredibly stable, but here's the kicker. After a special recursive process, they each give off a unique signature frequency. For 5, it's -19, and for 7, it's -17.
So you're probably wondering, where did those numbers come from? They're not just pulled out of thin air. Nope. There's a very specific process. For the number 5, you start with an equation that connects it to its counterpart, 7. Then you do this recursive subtraction, and bam, you land on its fundamental frequency, its heartbeat. That's how you get to -19.
And this is where it all clicks together. You take the signature for 5, which was -19, and you add it to the signature for 7, which is -17. And what do you get? -36. It perfectly closes the loop of the entire modulo 36 system. It's this beautiful internal harmony that just works.
Okay, so we've got our basic heartbeats, our oscillators, but what happens when they start to combine? That's what our next section is all about, complex systems. And we get into some really cool concepts here, like fused energy and something the theory poetically calls ghost DNA.
So, when you multiply two primes together, you get a semi-prime. Simple enough. But in this framework, it's way more than that. It's called a ghost-manifested system. The two original primes kind of fuse their energies, but, and this is the important part, they don't disappear. Their identities stick around like this hidden DNA, encoding all their properties into the new, bigger structure.
Take a look at this table. We're looking at some big semi-primes here. Let's just pick one, say 2501. The system analyzes its factors, calculates something called a step measure, and then it finds the end key, For 2501, that's minus 187. This N key is considered the number's ultimate resonant frequency. It's like discovering the number's true name.
So this all leads up to the grand finale of the theory. We've seen individual heartbeats and complex systems. So the big question is there one single number that holds the entire system together? The theory proposes there is. It's called the universal master key, the Fermat prime 65537.
The source calls what happens next a deep descent. As you can see, through this whole chain of recursive steps, 65537 gets systematically broken down. It moves from over 16,000 to 4,000, all the way down through 17 and -7, until it finally lands on its ultimate N key. And that N key is -24. This single number is proposed to be the universal symmetry axis. It's the ultimate null point, the silent center around which this entire symphony of numbers is revolving. The theory even calls it the Greenwich line of the whole system.
Now, to back this up, the theory points to some really intriguing connections. Turns out the number 24 pops up in some pretty serious places, like in advanced mathematics. And get this, it's also a critical number for making some models of string theory work. You know, the theory that tries to explain the entire universe. The argument here is that this can't just be a coincidence.
So, what's the endgame here? What's the point of all this? The ultimate ambition of the Multicode 6.0 framework is to build a prime sonar. The idea is absolutely wild. To use these echoes, these resonances from prime numbers, to actually map the hidden, fundamental structures of reality itself. Kind of like a sonar mapping the ocean floor.
And that leaves us with one last really big thought to chew on. You know, whether you see this as a groundbreaking theory or just a beautiful mathematical fiction, it forces us to ask a pretty compelling question. If numbers truly do have a hidden geometry, a living architecture, what other incredible patterns and systems are still out there, just waiting to be discovered?